In the past decades, Montreal's economy has changed. Our city has transitioned from manufacturing hub to a global service center. Since the 2008 economic meltdown, the number of self-employed people has grown faster than traditional salaried workers. For some, this situation is temporary, as they hope to eventually get a permanent job.
And generations after me have no illusion that they're going to get a job and have that job for their entire career.
Others will be self-employed for most of their working lives. Self-employed workers are bound by a lack of job security, often have low salaries, and at times experiencing difficulty working at home. Those between 20 and 25 years old, members of the so-called millennial generation, are getting out of school with no urge or ability to find traditional employment similar to the one their parents had. They want to get experience or start their own enterprises.
So, I mean, this is an explosion across the world, not just Montreal, but across the world. The idea of co-workings, the whole shift to people being more nomadic workers and being more freelancers.
The culture of creativity and the knowledge economy are giving rise to a new breed of work and workers. Yet recent economic and technological changes have made live work relevant again. Working at home can be solitary. There are no co-workers to talk to. Joining forces to network, forging social contacts, and sharing resources are recent trends that break the mold of the traditional office environment. Ecto is a cooperative that does exactly that.
Well, I mean, I think we started here initially because when we did the research, the data revealed back in 2007 when we were researching that this neighborhood in the city had the most freelancers of all the neighborhoods in the city. So we thought that was a good place to start it. And then, sure, that's true. In the end, I think co-workings have spread all around the city, and now they're like a local offices in every neighborhood. But this neighborhood, what's particular about it? I mean, you can see when you just the beauty and caring and soul of the Plateau neighborhood. So when we're in the office, everybody, you have a moment where you're stuck in your work and you just come on outside and you're in the street. So you can come into the residential streets in 2 seconds and have quiet and calm, or you can come on out onto the commercial street and get all the services you need. So we can just go and take a meeting from there and take it out into the restaurant and have a meal. We can go and buy our stuff and bring it back on upstairs. We can go and buy our office supplies. It's like the access to the transportation for going to any meeting in the city. It just makes it easy, fluid and easy. It's like the neighborhood kind of holds the space of the office a little bit. It's not at all the same as if we were downtown. You wouldn't be able to come out and have that kind of spaciousness and the quiet of a residential, beautiful street and the simplicity of all these services.
Do you think that there is the fact that people are working together and sharing space enhances creativity? Are people becoming more creative rather than working alone in their own home?
I don't think it, I know it. You were there with us this morning, and what were you in the kitchen for what? We were there for 10 minutes?
Yes.
How creative was that in 10 minutes?
Amazing, amazing.
And the thing about it being an office space is that, like, I come back and I see that same person the next day or a week later, and we pick up the thread of that conversation over time. And so it can grow with the slowness that requires, if you're going to go somewhere and break into new ground. You can't just do it in a 2-minute conversation, right? It's like that 2-minute conversation, and 2 weeks later another conversation, and then eventually you go, let's eat together and dig into this properly. And we do.
One wonders what makes working at ecto different than working in a traditional office environment. Is it the members' age or their background?
There are times where I'm like, wow, our average age has just risen, because you look and you're like, oh wow, there's like people who are like of a slightly different generation here today, and then sometimes like, oh wow, it's a really young age group today. So it's very. It would depend on the day you came, and you might go, oh yeah, I went to ecto, it's very young there, and you might go, oh, I went to ecto, it's like very slightly older.
Where do you store your stuff when you come here? I see that people have computers.
Yeah.
Each one get a cubicle or a storage space?
Yeah, everybody gets a storage box,
Okay.
so you can keep whatever you want in there. And when we have an event, they get wheeled out into this space so they're safe. We have a couple of cubicles, and we have a storeroom as well for the bigger stuff.
How does it work? People pay monthly contribution? How the arrangement is?
Yeah, it depends on the different options. So you can you can pay, become a resident, which means you can use the space 24 hours during the day, during the weekend, and everybody has a key that they can come in. Or you can, right through to, you can just buy a number of passes and use them for the day and say, I'm going to use my pass for the day. Right down to, I just want to use it half a day and tick in.
And this was successful for you?
Yeah, very much so. Because people don't want to all have the same subscription level.
One of the challenges faced by home workers is how to separate between home time and family time, and to physically distinguish between the two spaces. Dr. Pureman is a clinical psychologist who works from and meets clients at home. She seems to have found the balance between both.
I work primarily in the mornings, exclusively in the mornings. So the morning is, like most families, a morning rush of sorts. Getting our 2 little boys ready for the day and fed and scurrying around the kitchen and making sure needs are met. Then we have a nice breakfast together, and my husband takes my older son off to daycare, and my younger son stays home, and then I have a nanny come here, watch him while I work in the mornings. And then the afternoons are, I have a little bit of time alone with my youngest son, and then we go pick up the other son, and then more chaos ensues until the scurry of dinner time. And then it's sending the little ones off to bed, and then we have about 5 minutes to relax, and that's the end of a day.
And preparing for the next day.
Yes.
How you came to the idea to live and work in the same place?
Well, my husband and I are both self-employed, and I think both of us, you could argue that we're both a bit of control freaks and like to be fully in charge of our environments, of our time, of our in a sense of how our day goes. We both like to structure our own lives that way. Initially, the idea was both of us would work from home and then raise our family in the same space. It didn't exactly work that way. My husband started working from home, but after having our first child and having a toddler run around, for him, he didn't have as much privacy as I did for my work. Didn't really go very well. He didn't get very much work done, so he rented an office outside of the home. I think it was really just a way to feel like we could design our space and our lives and our day the way we wanted to. And for me, as a mother of small children, it's very appealing to be able to come and go from work and be able to, if I have an hour off from work, be able to come into my kitchen and prepare dinner. And it's certainly an efficient way of managing both work and family life.
What is the advantages of working from home? What do you find as a great advantage?
No traffic, no commute. I mean, that's sometimes that gets me into trouble because I end up thinking I have more time. Sometimes that happens, you know how it is in life. When you have less of a commute, you can manage to be a little bit later because I keep thinking, oh, I have time, and then I'm a little late. But yeah, I mean, not having to on a snowy day and a snowstorm. I mean, the fact that I don't have to, you know, embrace the rush or even get myself out of the door is really quite amazing. The ability to interweave things like grocery shopping and cooking and cleaning and doing household things or seeing my children has been a real advantage. The other thing is that you know, I've raised two small children in a very attachment type based parenting, so I keep my little ones close to me, and it has allowed me to not, even though I work part-time, it still allows me contact with them, you know, during the day. And you know, my youngest, I'm a nursing mom, I breastfeed, so when he was really young I would sometimes work and then come home and not have very far to go, and if he was upset, you know, comfort him and nurse him and then go back to work. So that's not something I could have done if I worked outside of the house.
As a psychologist, do you see advantage to being close to your kids at that early stage? Like, there is advantage of parents
Sure.
near working at home and being, what are the advantages? Like for future development of a child that they see their parents?
Security. I mean, teaching a child that you're there to meet more of their needs than if you're not, right? I mean, that's what children need. They need you, right? They need you as a parent. They need you they need to feel that you're there and you're part of their lives, and that if they're scared, sick, whatever, and they need you, that you're not dropping them somewhere for the day, right?
I understand that the layout of the place is such that the living part is the front of the house and your office is at the back,
Yeah.
with a separate entrance?
Yes.
So you have a separate entrance. How does it work? The fact that people are not moving to the public spaces,
Right.
it works well?
It works well. You know, in that is our back entrance near our car. So sometimes it can be a little bit tricky in that if I'm working, it means other people can't come through the house through the back. So say if my husband goes somewhere by car, he can't come through the back entrance. So then he's forced to go, it's not that far, but he's forced to go a little bit around the block and come in this way. So that could be a little bit dicey. It also means I have to keep my waiting room free of children's mittens in the winter and boots, which is not always the easiest thing to do, but overall I find that it works.
Designing a studio or an office at home can pose a challenge. Where should it be located? Decisions are best made when collaboration takes place between clients and architects. Did you think about Juliette's work at home during the design?
It was one of the first things Juliette and I discussed. It was an important concern since the workspace was next to the sleeping area. It was a key concern of Juliette's, which made it starting point of this project.
Did you consider the fact that your client is a creative person? Was the space or work environment made special as a result?
What is special here? It is the simplicity of the place. A big white open space in which natural light travels easily all day long. Finally, we concentrate the services, the library block, the bathroom, so that the space will be more open and bright.
Did you envision domestic zone and working zones?
The thread is thin here. The workspace is directly connected to the bedroom, and it is the furniture which creates the intimacy. Otherwise, both rooms are very close. In this case, it was the client who liked the configuration. For Juliette, it was a starting point. She wanted to link both spaces.
Describe the creating process. Did you discuss her needs? How did you work together?
The first thing we made when we started the project was to consider the structure's existing conditions. We decided to preserve what was here originally. The windows, the brick, the support walls were all kept. We managed to completely rebuild the structure, which permitted us to open the first floor by eliminating the constraint of the big bearing wall. It also had a great advantage when it came to insulation and ventilation. Today, we are experiencing a heat wave, but we are very comfortable.
Did you think about natural light during the summer and winter seasons? Was it part of the process?
The light is very different in the summer and the winter. It is different in its trajectory, the height in which the light is going to penetrate. The summer, the sun is more level, and what we made of the outside, we put an overhang on the roof. The light in summer does not overheat the space. Otherwise, essentially, as the building was already fixed in its neighborhood, it was necessary to work just a little with the available light. Using windows in the new part, it is what we see at the top of the wall behind me.
You introduced a swing to separate the sleeping and the workspaces. Was it your idea?
It was Juliette's idea. If I remember well, we tried to create something funny where the children could also enjoy. Since it is the adult area, we want to show that the children also welcome. We also want something a bit playful. Despite the fact that we are indoors between four walls, we can still play. When I sit down on a swing, I become a child again.
How did you choose to work at home?
I think that is my temperament. I am very solitary. Very, very, very solitary. That allows me to see life from a distance and see what surrounds me. When I am indoors, I am less distracted and I can concentrate easily. I can enter a universe in which I can create more easily.
In your creative process, do you need this solitary space to get you started?
Yes, clearly. This and also the light.
The type of light that you have in the house.
Especially the winter's light.
Do you think that for a creative person, a well-designed house is necessary for inspiration?
It is not necessary because I have always created something, but it is so much more pleasant to work here. It is a beautiful place which pleases us, which inspires us, part of the incidents of our life, much more than just our work. When we open our eyes in the morning, when the sun sets, and when we enter the room, and when everything is bathed in evening light, we feel differently. When we look at the course of the light on the white wall, and the course of the light in the afternoon, which touches a jar of pencils and which passes in the window, which stands out on the table, it is very fulfilling.
Are these elements part of your world? Garden, school, workshop? It is an extraordinary life. Recent innovation in digital technologies have helped link the home to a global network of work opportunities. Communication and exchange of information at work no longer have a physical limit. I understand that some of your clients are long distance, are far away, you worked on projects. How does it work? Like, how do you work with clients who are not next to you, to which you cannot drive and meet every day? How does it work?
It does take a lot of planning. One project I'm working on in Cape Breton, which is a multi-generational holiday house by the sea, involves a certain amount of going on site to plan certain steps of the project. A lot of texting, which strangely enough has become very common practice in architecture, texting the contractor, texting the guy on site, texting the window installer, getting pictures by text message. I mean, there's a kind of instantaneous communication on site, even without a landline, even without standard forms of communication. It's quite amazing. I would say in that project we've used Skype, but with the client, because the client is actually my extended family. And we planned the house as a participatory design process with my parents-in-law and my mother and my husband and myself, and sometimes my kids have opinions too, as kids do. So we did participatory design meetings by Skype, 2-hour-long workshops, playing with different things. But I would say the on-site stuff has been more telephone and text.
How did digital invention, digital communication change, in your view, the practice of architecture and how it affects your work?
Well, I think there are two levels to that. I mean, there's just the basic drawing part. I'm probably the last generation to have done hand drawing as my first learning about architecture. I think that the classes after me didn't draw by hand anymore. So there's all that relationship to the line that we draw either on a paper or on a computer, which I think is quite different. I do have a real attachment to hand drawing as a way of thinking about what you're doing when you're designing a building. But that being said, I work mostly on the computer.
How did it affect communication? The fact that you can Skype or text, as you mentioned?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I mean, I think particularly text messages. Skype is good. The project I'm working on in New York, we often have Skype meetings, my client and I, and it's much better, I find, for talking about how a project is going to unfold, getting a sense of people's actual reaction to a proposal or to a question. When you can see their facial expression, you get a lot more information than if you only hear them on the telephone. So I think that Skype is really important for that kind of communication. And then on-site text messages have become a huge part of the way that things unfold. And it's quite practical, especially on small projects when the contractor isn't necessarily in an office. In a big project, the contractor is probably in an office, probably answering the telephone, but on a small project, the contractor often has tools in his hand or is driving a car, so they can't always answer the phone, but if you send a little text message, you can get an answer within half an hour to something that you need to know relatively quickly, and the same goes for them. And when they have a question for the architect or for the client, they can send a message, send a photograph, so you get the visual and the text information. It's quite miraculous. And there's also a trace.
Give me an example in the project that you are doing in New York. You may send a drawing well in advance and then you are on Skype or on the phone, or how does it work?
Well, what I try and do, particularly for design meetings, I have gone twice to New York to meet with the clients. I think Skype doesn't entirely replace the face-to-face or the going into a space, particularly, as architects, we like to be in the place to get a sense of what it's like, what it sounds like, what the light is like at different times of day. But yes, we insulated the inside and kept the outside
and you punctured hole and placed windows.
With grinders, and you can't really get that with photographs or Skype. But once we've kind of gone through and met about things and looked at different options, then we can discuss details, we can work through things, we can look at sketches together. In this one, we've got the kitchen organized like this, and maybe we want to switch this around, and we can look at it together. We can look things up, look at products, finishes, we can look them up together. So a lot of those small kind of technical decisions can get made and refined on Skype quite easily.
I see that you also have solar power.
Yeah, it's off the grid because we're about almost a kilometer from the road, and the cost of bringing the power in would have been about the same as putting in the solar panels, which is rare. Usually you do the ecological things because you want to. In this case, it actually was a cost efficiency thing.
So this will be another form of working together, but not in a traditional sense, I guess.
Exactly. I think that most of the people that I'm looking at it with either have their own practices or have in the past. And we like the autonomy and the way that we work with our clients, and we have a habit of finding clients. And so keeping that level of autonomy and joining forces actually allows us to perhaps bid on larger projects, to work on larger projects, to work together on projects. So it's taking what we do and what we do well and making it better, rather than having to maybe sacrifice some things by becoming an employee in a larger, more hierarchical structure. And as we were talking about earlier, there are quite a lot of large offices now with corporate structures that are fairly rigid. And so I think that none of us is particularly tempted to go into that kind of environment from this, working at home and deciding everything and deciding that today I'm going to work for 4 hours, but I'm going to work all weekend. You know, it's up to me because I'm controlling the deadline and I'm making sure I meet the deadlines with my clients.
Do you think that the nature of work, your view of the nature of work is changing because of this element that you mentioned, the digital revolution, the fact that we have Skype, the fact that architecture is changing? Do you think that home at work will be bigger in the future? Is this a trend of the upswing?
I think it is. I think that my generations and generations after me have no illusion that they're going to get a job and have that job for their entire career. It doesn't really exist. There aren't very many jobs like that anymore. And so the idea that you have to create your own work, create your own business often, so we all become small entrepreneurs or freelancers. It's kind of the way that I think the economy is starting to sustain itself. And there are good and bad things about that. I think the good thing is that people have a lot of creative control over building their own work life, inventing their work life, working in a way that they would like to work. I think the disadvantage is that sometimes, it can be a stretch financially for people. It's not always successful either. It sounds awesome, but it's not always very profitable. So that's a challenge. And also in the long run, things like retirement. I mean, I don't know, I guess sometime somebody will retire, but none of us have pensions, do we? So some of those job security issues I think are challenges in that kind of new economy. But I think it's much more widespread than anyone realizes.
With continuous economic transformation and ongoing technological innovation, one wonders what is next for our work environment. Will the cooperative work movement thrive and expand?
So, I mean, this is an explosion across the world, not just Montreal, but across the world. The idea of co-workings, the whole shift to people being more nomadic workers and being more freelancers. And also, even if you're an employee, being able to try out different ways of working. So I think this is like a first step of the future of work, is like that. And I think you can expand it, how I see things going in the future. The idea of maker spaces, fab labs, where you can actually be fabricating things, mixing in with that, cafes mixing in with that, libraries mixing in with that. So you can start actually mixing the idea of kind of a next stage office with next stage other organizations.
One of the challenges faced by initiators of cooperative workspace is how to plan it. How do we relate public to private areas where people can concentrate on their task uninterrupted? What is the importance of the kitchen? I see people working there in the kitchen. What is the importance?
I really think this is the heart of ecto. It was with the original plans, it was missing, and everybody just went, no. It's like it's the cornerstone of it's not just having the Wi-Fi and the tables and having a space. We wanted to have a place that felt more homely and people could actually eat together, cook together, and actually be together, which I find is very community based. If you by making food together, you really cement more of a community.
This is wonderfully sustainable. Help the environment,
Yeah.
on different level and even social interaction between people.
Yeah, it's like everything's kind of in a changing way, and ecto kind of is it's part of that change, and the way of being more flexible, more mobile, more cooperative, and then I think you could also add on the layer of shared ownership, and the fact that we're cooperative is for something within all of that mix. Even though it might not be initially what people are coming for, but then afterwards they discover the idea, oh, and I get to own this place too and make decisions about this place. And so that has a really good
that you are not only using it, but you are co-owner of this place.
Yes. And deciding its future together with the others.
Much like the changes that are continuously affecting Montreal's housing market, the nature of employment is also changing. As we invent new technologies, our economy is transforming and new lifestyles are emerging. As a result, we can predict that the line between home and work will become less clear in the near future. Thank you for joining me on the porch.